Good afternoon. My name is Tony Wright, and today I'll be giving a presentation on moral dilemmas in social work. So, the topics that I'm going to discuss are what are morals and moral dilemmas? Then I'll be giving two examples where there are moral dilemmas in social work practice and give possible solutions to these situations. And finally, I'll finish off with a brief summary of the things that I have discussed. So, what are morals and moral dilemmas? As described by the Cambridge Dictionary, morals are relating to standards of good or bad behaviour, fairness, honesty, etc., that each person believes in rather than to laws. So this means that rather than laws and rules that are set, they are more of a unity of what society believes is right and wrong. They can differ greatly between different social groups, cultures, and generations. Now, moral dilemmas are situations where a person is faced with conflicting morals. This is where the outcome cannot satisfy them all, and there will always be a violation of at least one moral concern. Now, with social workers often working in very challenging scenarios with some of the most vulnerable people in our society, there will be many moral dilemmas when dealing with situations and interventions. Here I will look at just two case studies which present difficult moral dilemmas, and I'll evaluate possible solutions to these situations. So, case study number 1. A social worker is working with a man who has recently been released from prison after serving time on a child sex offence case. He wants to integrate himself back into society, which will mean being around a mix of people in the community, including families with children. Now, the moral question here is, should the social worker tell people in the community who he is mixing with of his criminal conviction and that he is now on the registered sex offenders list, as he could be mixing with families and with their children? Now, the Sex Offences Act 2003 covers the convictions for all the sex crimes in the UK, and those committed against children hold some of the longest sentences, and therefore are seen as some of the worst crimes that can be committed. If parents with children were aware of his past, I'm sure that he would be treated very differently, and parents would be protecting their children from mixing with this man under any circumstance. However, although morally people, and especially parents, would want to know who is around the children and what they could potentially do, having previously committed such crimes against children, the social worker must respect the client's right to privacy and therefore not disclose any personal details about him or his past. They must also promote social inclusion and fight against discrimination, as explained in the British Association of Social Workers Code of Ethics. Now, where possible, a social worker must uphold these values and ethics, despite if it goes against their natural morals. Now, if the social worker did disclose his personal history, he would almost certainly face discrimination and would not be included and treated the same as others in the community, which directly goes against what the social worker should be aiming for. Now, the law does also protect people in these situations. It requires the man to be registered on the sex offenders list and must have regular contact with the police and keep them updated with home addresses, as in some scenarios, regular visits and home assessments will be made. Now, the criminal history would also be disclosed in any DBS checks. Now, this, in most circumstances, would stop him being able to work in many jobs, especially those working with children. Now, the laws will protect the public without needing to disclose his personal history directly to them. Now, despite common belief, people cannot make open searches in their area for people on the sex offenders register. However, they can put in an application to the authorities regarding a particular person who is in contact with their child to find out if they are on this register. Now, it would also be the social worker's responsibility to continue working with the client and assess any risks of reoffending. If he did disclose information about having hurt another person or child, or that he planned on doing so, this would change the right to privacy and the right to self-determination. In this circumstance, the social worker would have to intervene and share information with other agencies, such as the police, to protect the public. Now, case study number 2. A domestic abuse victim has told her social worker that her partner, the domestic abuser, is being released from prison and will be moving back into her home where they'll be continuing their relationship. Before he was convicted, he repeatedly abused her, both mentally and physically. Now, the moral dilemma. Morally, most people would want to tell this lady to not get back into the relationship, as she'll be putting herself back at risk of being abused again. With the abuse having happened many times before, and statistically, domestic violence crimes have a higher rate of reoffence to the victim than any other crime, there are high chances she would fall victim of abuse from this man again. Now, the safety of this client is the greatest importance to the social worker, so stopping this risk would seem the best thing to do. However, this lady has the right to self-determination, being able to make her own decisions. The social worker cannot tell her what to do or what decisions she should make. Instead, the social worker should continue to support the client, offering education and factual information on abuse, making sure she fully understands what happened to her and any potential future risks. Now, these should only be facts and they should not be exaggerated in any way in order to sway the decisions in favour of what the social worker or what other people think is best. Now, through the transition period of the partner being released from prison and moving back into the home, the lady should continue to be supported and assessed for any potential risks. If there are signs of abuse or she discloses information of abuse, the social worker could then divulge this information onto the police. This could possibly lead to him being reincarcerated, but if not, she would still be able to make her own decisions on whether she wanted to continue the relationship in their home together, despite what other people believe is best for her. Now, to summarise, during social work there will be many scenarios which lead to difficult moral dilemmas. Often these will not have one simple solution, and many factors will need to be assessed when coming to resolving these issues. Primarily, the ethics in social work set out by the British Association of Social Workers needs to be upheld. There will be incidences, as pointed out in these two case studies, where if there is an issue of harm to themselves or to others, a social worker will have to respond to these, and therefore certain rights and ethics will be overturned, such as the right to self-determination and the right to confidentiality. Thank you for listening. Now here is a list of my references and bibliography. Thank you.